Hi, this is Kevin. Welcome to my tutorial on installing Anaconda on Windows. I'm recording this for my classes at the University of Illinois School of Information Sciences, uh, and my comments here are going to be really targeted to the students in those classes. If you're a YouTuber who found your way here, you're welcome to stay, but keep that in mind. What version of Windows? Well, I'm going to be demonstrating how to do these things on Windows 11. This is the first time I'm going to be doing that. Up until now, I've had tutorials that use Windows 10, and people have been using those for both Windows 10 and Windows 11. So I think that the opposite will work too. So your user interface may look a little different if you're using Windows 10, but it should be just fine. So here's what we're going to do. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to make sure that our copy of Windows is up to date. Then we're going to address the issue of what if you already have Anaconda installed? You probably have an older version installed. So what we're going to do then is I'm going to ask you to bear with me while we download and install Anaconda, and we talk a little bit about the basics of using Anaconda at the command line. But then we're going to update Anaconda, which you should do even if you just installed the new version, okay? So if you already have a version of Anaconda installed, hang around. We're going to work with Anaconda Navigator, which is the graphical user interface version of the Anaconda tool. We're going to create our first Anaconda virtual environment, one that's going to be called E4 Trainer Python course. And then the very last thing we do is we're going to test this first virtual environment to make sure that it has everything in it that's supposed to be there. So let's begin by making sure that a copy of Windows is up to date. Okay, so let's look at this. I'm going to go down to the start icon, and up here in the search, I'm going to type update, and it brings up check for updates. So I'm going to click on this. Okay, and it's going to show the state of the updates. Now, what's interesting here is that I'm working on a Windows 11 virtual machine that's on my Mac, and when I did the install of that yesterday, the last of my updates actually failed. Okay. And I can retry this. I'm going to retry this, see how this goes. So it's going to check for updates again. And we're going to see if this works. So we got the install error, okay? And I don't know how that's eventually going to resolve. But the fact is that you may have the same thing, right? I just want you to apply all the updates that you can because my history of working with students on installs of products where the install doesn't work or the product doesn't work as expected, occasionally we find out that they just have an old version of the OS. Okay, so we want to rule that out. But if it's not going to apply this, well, then it's not going to apply it. Okay, so we're not going to worry about it. So that's as updated as mine is going to get. Again, the question is, what if you already have Anaconda installed? Anaconda gets updated fairly often Okay, so you're going to want to know how to update Anaconda such that you've got the latest version of it. All right, so hang around. We're going to go through the download and the fresh install, but then we'll get back to doing the update and we'll be ready for you in a little bit. Okay, so downloading Anaconda, let's do that. So let's fire up a browser. I'm going to use Edge, not because I'm a big fan of Edge, but because that's the standard browser for Windows. And I'm going to type into the address bar anaconda.com. And that's going to take me to the download page. And I'm going to accept cookies. Now, I'm expecting this recording to have a life of about a year, maybe a little shorter, maybe a little longer. So you may come here to the page and it may be different. All right. Right now, when you come here, you just get the download icon and it goes to the version that we're going to want to download. Within the last 2 years, there was it was sort of packaged to call it, well, the one that we wanted was called individual version. And then there was another version. And now we're back to not naming versions and just clicking on the download button. But it's entirely possible that whenever you're going to run this, that the buttons may be a little different. Generally speaking, I'm going to want you to install the newest version of everything that we install, unless in the instructions I've warned you off of that for one reason or the other and told you to use a particular version or to not use a particular version. Okay? So we're just going to click the download button, and here we are. And so we're going to close that dialog box, and it did the download. Okay. And for right now, I'm just going to minimize the browser. Okay, and I'm going to go down, I'm going to open my File Explorer. And I'm going to double click on Downloads. Okay, and you can see I've downloaded Anaconda. And I've got two versions of it here. That might have been because I was practicing. I practiced at 847 and now I'm here. And I'm just going to pause to make sure that we haven't got a problem here. So let me pause. Okay, we're back. No problem. Okay, so I'm just going to pick the most recent of these and I'm going to double click on it. Okay. And I've decided maybe that's a mistake. Why is that? Well, it's just going to run it as an ordinary user. And maybe I don't want to do that. On Windows, we have this concept of running things as an administrator. And it turns out when installing software, that's preferable. So let's cancel out of this. And yes, we want to quit. Okay. Now I'm going to come back. Instead of double click, I'm going to right click and I'm going to pick Run as Administrator. Now, if it turns out that you don't have this option, well, then just run it normally with the double click. But this is going to give us some options that we're going to prefer. So run as administrator. It's going to fire it up again. And do I want this app to make changes to my device? Yes, I do. And okay, so now I get the first panel. I'm going to click next, and then I'm going to click I agree. Now it says install for. If you were able to run this as an admin, you can pick all users or just me, and we want to pick all users. If you had just run it normally because you didn't have the privileges to be an admin, then you're going to have to pick just me. Okay, so I'm going to pick all users and then next. Okay, and the destination folder is going to be different if we're using all users than if we picked just me. The problem is when we install for just me, the name of the folder, as I recall, has a space in the middle of the file name, which is a thing that Windows is kind of famous for. And that's unfortunately not what we want. Okay, well, it's not ideal. We'll live with it. But here, because we're running this for all users, it's going to put it on the C drive, and it's got a really pretty name for the directory. So I'm just going to leave the destination folder value as is in either case and click on next. Register Anaconda 3 as a system Python 3.9. Yeah, that's fine. And now we're going to click install. And I'm just going to pause it in case this is going to take a while, and I'll be back. Okay, we're back. And I have to confess that mine took a while to install, maybe 5 minutes. Okay, and it's going to depend on how fast your computer is, how much memory you have. It may even download a couple of extra things. So it could have to do with the speed of your internet connection, but I'm not sure about that. But when you come to the end, over this green bar, it says completed, and it lights up the button next. Okay, so I'm just going to choose next. And this is kind of advertising, so now I'm just going to click on next again. And there's a couple of tutorial things. I'll leave those checked, and we're going to click on finish. And there we go. That's all done. And welcome to Anaconda, all that kind of stuff. Okay, so let me show you where we are in our kind of table of contents. So we've downloaded and installed Anaconda. We're about to learn just a few Anaconda command line basics. And you'll notice I say Conda here. Interestingly, the tech jocks, especially the ones who work at the command line, call this Conda, and the command that you use is actually Conda. Okay, so if we're going to work at the command line, we're probably going to benefit by downloading this thing called the cheat sheet. And this is the official Anaconda cheat sheet. So I'm going to go back to the browser, which I think I accidentally closed. So now I'm going to open it again, okay? And I'm going to type in the address bar Anaconda cheat sheet. And it's going to show me a couple of options. Now, the options that I've been liking is this one that's coming up here now. the cheat sheet Anaconda 4.14. So click on that. That's pretty close to the version that we're going to be running. Okay. And so yeah, and the cheat sheet version, uh, I've been pointing people at the Conda 4.6, but I see this is 4.12x latest. Let's get this. Okay, so now it's going to download it, and I'm going to click up here, open file. Okay, and here's the latest of the cheat sheets. So I'm going to make this just a little bigger. We're not going to spend a lot of time on this, but if you're going to work at the command line, I find it really helpful to have the cheat sheet. So what are kind of the things that we're going to use? We're going to use Conda info, or we're going to use Conda update, and we're going to use Conda activate. Okay. And again, this is here for your reference. Okay, so I'm going to close this because I'm going to show you which of the commands that we're going to use. Okay, so now we're going to work at the command line, and not just any command line processor, but there's a special one for Conda. So let's go down to the taskbar and click on Start, and then in the upper right, All Apps. And you'll notice we have an entry now for Anaconda 3 64-bit, and we're going to take the drop down, okay? And there are two prompts, okay? One's for PowerShell, and of course, if you've worked with PowerShell, fine, you can use that. But if you're like me and you're not really an experienced PowerShell user, you're probably going to want this Anaconda prompt. Okay. And we're going to be using this from time to time. So let's take this Anaconda prompt, right click, choose more, and then pin to taskbar. Okay. And that will start up the Anaconda prompt, the command line environment for Anaconda. Okay. And that's going to be sufficient for almost everything you ever do with Anaconda. But the first thing that we're going to try to do with Anaconda, well, not the first thing, we'll do a couple of other things. But remember I said that we were going to update Anaconda? Well, because of the way permissions work on Windows, okay, if you really want to update Anaconda and you've installed it for all the users, okay, which I have, you have to be running this the command line program as an administrator. So there's no way to do that with this icon we just put down on the taskbar. So how are we going to do that? Well, we just go over Anaconda prompt here again, and we right click and we choose more, and we say run as administrator. You only need to do this if you're going to try to update Anaconda. So do we want this to allow, do we want to allow this app to make changes to your device? Yes. Okay. Now, Windows is always user friendly, maybe not friendly to me, but I don't like the font. The font here is too small. And I did some noodling around, and I found out if we want to change the font, we come up here in the title bar where the title of this thing is, and we hover over it and we right click, and then we go down to the bottom and we choose properties. And then there are a bunch of tabs across the top, and the second one is font. And I'm going to choose 24 point, and then I'm going to click OK. And now the window got bigger and the types gets big enough for you to see on the video and for me to see with my eyes. Okay, now I know that we're in an Anaconda prompt because one of the Anaconda virtual environments is activated, and that's the one called base. Now, it's not one that I recommend that you use for anything. It has a lot of extra packages in it. It's not really the right one to use, but you can see that we're in Anaconda and it's installed. And one of the command line commands that's really helpful that is on the cheat sheet is conda space info, enter. And here we get a lot of information about the installation and two things I'm going to call your attention to. The Conda version is 4.12. Okay, now that's pretty recent, but not the newest. Okay, and then down here, see where it says env directories? This is a list of the directories that hold virtual environments. Now, one of these up here is where that base virtual environment is. The ones that we create are going to go under our user ID. Okay, it's going to be in C on my machine, C users, a trainer one, that's my user ID, app data, local, conda, envs. So the reason I point this out is from time to time when we're trying to configure things, like we're trying to configure a new project in PyCharm, and it wants us to point to a particular file or files in our virtual environment. What happens is that your mind can go blank about where in the world our virtual environments are. So fire up the conda command line, do a conda info, and you will remember where your conda virtual environments are. Okay. Another thing that you can ask is conda info envs, envs, and we can see that we have the base one and nothing else. And you can see the directory where the base one is. Now, when we do that, the next time that we try to do it, we'll see the one that we're going to create. Okay, good. Now this is getting kind of busy. Okay, so let's type clear. Let's type CLS. Yeah, that'll do it. CLS is how you clear, I guess, clear screen, right? Okay, so we've got this. Now we're ready to do the update. So let's do this. Conda space update space -- all, enter. Okay, and so now what it's doing is it's looking for the packages that there's a newer version of. Okay, and each of the packages is a part of the Python infrastructure. Okay, so now it's got a list of 246 that there are newer versions of. Okay, and it says that it could update these proceed Y or N. Okay, so I'm going to type in lowercase y and enter. And you can see it's downloading and extracting the packages. Now, I just want to point out that if you didn't get this done, and you got something that said you didn't have the permission to modify the files, you have to remember to go back in you have to you're going to have to exit out of this command line program and rerun it as an administrator. You can see I ran it as an administrator. Okay. Alrighty. So that looks good. Now let's do a CLS again, so we can see a pretty clean screen. And then let's say conda space info, enter. And here we're up to 4.13. So we've gotten the newest version installed. Okay. Well, that looks good. All right. So let's see where we are on our agenda. So we just finished updating Anaconda. And we did that at the command line because that's where you do it. Okay. Now we're going to work with Anaconda Navigator. Anaconda Navigator is the graphical user interface version of the Anaconda tools. Okay, and it's just easier to use. It's more user friendly. There's certainly some tech jocks who might prefer to work at the command line, and if you're one of them, you can certainly do that. We don't cover how to do a lot of the tests in the command line, but we do use this Anaconda Navigator. Okay, so let's us do the following thing. Let's close this command line session, exit. Okay, so now that's gone. All right, now how are we going to run Anaconda Navigator? Well, we can run it by going to Start. So let's go down the taskbar, click on Start, then up to All Apps. Here's the drop down for Anaconda 3. Okay, then we have Anaconda Navigator, but before we click on it, let's right click, go to More, Pin to Taskbar, and now you can see this green circle with some pattern in it. That's the logo. So let's click off of this panel and go down and give Anaconda, the Anaconda Navigator icon, one click in the taskbar, and it should fire up. Now, it doesn't fire up super fast. It opens lots of windows first, but if you're patient, it'll fire up here in a minute, and we'll be where we need to be. Nobody ever claimed this thing was fast. All right, so here it is, Anaconda Navigator. So if you have some kind of offer that popped up or some kind of a link, maybe up here on the upper right hand side, to update Anaconda Navigator, that probably means that you forgot to update Anaconda. Okay, when we update Anaconda, it downloads the new version, the newest version of the Navigator. So if you don't have the newest version of the Navigator, maybe you didn't update Anaconda, or perhaps there's yet a newer version or whatever, and go ahead. Again, unless I tell you otherwise, always use the newest version of the software that's offered to you, unless I've told you a specific version in the instructions in the weekly schedule, or I've warned you off of some version in the instructions. Other than that, take the newest one. So the big thing that we want to do when we're working with Anaconda is to create and find and maintain these virtual environments. And in the left panel, there's a link for environments. We're going to click on that. And now you can see it's turned into a three-panel deal. Okay. And in the middle panel is a list of the virtual environments. And there's one called base, and in parentheses it says root. And this is the one that it was created for us. And it's got just about everything in it but the kitchen sink. And it may not have all the choices that we want. So again, I'm not going to recommend that you use the base. What practitioners do is that they typically create a new virtual environment either for every new project that they work on or for every new project group. Now for us, in my Python course, we're going to have a long line of projects that we create that are all part of the project the group of projects for the course, and we're going to create one virtual environment for the whole course. Okay? And that brings us to, I brought over the wrong panel. Let me grab the right one. Creating our first virtual env, that's what people call virtual environments, virtual envs. Okay, and we're all going to use the same name. The students are going to use this name. The instructor is going to use these names. The TAs and the grader are going to use this name. It's going to be called E4 Trainer Python Course. And the typography is all lowercase, words separated by underscores. And in Python, this kind of case treatment is called snake case. Snake as in serpent as in Python. Okay? So all lowercase, words separated by underscores. Okay? And everybody uses this exact name. Okay, so let's do that. Okay. So if we go to the middle panel and come down to the bottom left, click on the icon for create, and it pops up a dialog. So we're going to type that name into the box, E4, that says, that's my personal shorthand for environment for underscore trainer. That's how you know it's my Python course, underscore Python underscore course. Okay. And we've got a couple of check boxes. We did, Python's already checked. We want to leave that as is. We're not using R, so we're not going to check that. And then the version of Python that we want, it defaults to 3.9.12. Now, in the current semester, this is the fall of 2022, we're going to be using Python 3.10. There's one new Python 3.10 feature that we're going to cover that if you don't ask for Python 3.10, well, you're not going to be able to use it in your project when the time comes. As for what version to use in a future semester, read the instructions in the weekly schedule and it'll tell you what version of Python you want to put here. So let's take the drop down. There's only one version of Python 3.10, 3.10.4. Let's take that and we're going to click on create. And you can see down at the bottom, we have a kind of a status panel. So it says it's creating the environment, and then it says it's fetching the files. Okay, and how long it's going to take to do that really has to do with, again, how fast your computer is, how fast your connection to the internet is, how busy the repository is on the other end that's serving all of those. And when you're done, well, then it just has here on mine it says 17 packages available. Okay, so what are the packages? Well, they're right here. Okay, there's the slider. Oh, uh, it's still installing a few, I guess. So we can take the slider. We can see that they're all here. They're in alphabetical order. And if we look at Python here, we see we've got 3.10.4. Now, ordinarily under the description, it would have the description of what each of the packages are. And unfortunately, Anaconda Navigator has a history of being a little buggy. Okay. And most of the time we just tolerate that because it creates a lot of convenience. Uh, I've had a semester, probably just one, in which we weren't really able to use Anaconda Navigator at all because at that point it had too many bugs. So we had to resort to the command line. But the current bug that I see is that you can't see the descriptions for the packages. It's okay, we're just going to go by the names. Okay, so we've got the Python that we wanted. Are we done? No, we're not. Because the very last unit of the course we're going to cover is going to be on Jupyter notebooks. And that requires more package installation. So, how do you do that? Well, you have to ask for it. So right now, the view that we have in the right-hand panel, it's all the packages that are installed. So we're going to go up here, we're going to click on the word installed, and we're going to choose not installed. Okay, so that's going to give us a longer list of all the packages that were available that are not installed. Then we're going to go over to the right-hand side and click on the search window and type in Jupyter, all lowercase, Jupyter, Py because of Python, okay, and press enter. Okay, and here's where the descriptions of the packages would have really helped, okay. The one that we're going to pick is just called Jupyter, okay, so we're going to click that in order to say that we want that installed. And then if you could read the description, it says it's something like it's a meta package that includes all of the Jupyter packages. Okay, so we're just essentially installing everything but the kitchen sink with respect to Jupyter, and maybe the kitchen sink too. Okay, so you check the checkbox, which puts a little, maybe a download arrow in it. It's a weird treatment. I would say from the perspective of usability, if you're going to have a checkbox, it ought to either be blank or have a check in it. But call me a usability stickler. Okay, so you select it and then you have to come down here to the lower right and click the apply button. Okay, now it's going to pop up a dialog box in which it's going to show you a list of everything that would be installed. Okay, it's not installed yet. It's what would be installed. Now you have to click apply in the dialog box. So click apply. And now you can see the installation going on down here. And again, how long that installation is going to take really depends upon the speed of the connection, the busyness of the server, all those things. Okay. And what are we connecting to? Well, we're connecting to a repository that's managed by the Anaconda folks. in which they've taken all these parts of the Python infrastructure, um, and they've sort of curated it, okay, such that um, when we ask for a combination of packages, at least in theory, we get the right version of everything with some assurances that we're not going to have conflicts between packages and versions. So, do we want this app from an unknown publisher to make changes to your device? Yes. And it keeps going. So I'm going to pause here. No, I think I got the Jupyter packages. I'm not going to pause. Okay, now we're just looking at the Jupyter packages that we chose. There are 10 of them. Okay. Now, how do we get back to the normal view? Well, let's click the X to get rid of the Jupyter search criteria. Okay, and then go over and click on not installed and pick installed. And now we can see we have a lot of packages. Now we have 144 packages installed. And why is that? Well, because we took a broad approach, an inclusive approach to which parts of Jupyter we installed. All right, so we should have everything that we need now for my Python course. Okay, and we've created E4 Trainer Python course. So what's left to do? Well, let's test our first virtual environment. Well, how do you test it? Well, you test it by seeing that you're able to run the products that you think you installed. Okay, and I'm going to show you two ways to do that. I'm going to show you how to do that within Anaconda Navigator, and then we'll go back to the command line. We'll do it there. So within Anaconda Navigator, you can go up to your um, virtual env, and at any one time, one of these or the other is selected. And you can tell by this green bar on the left side. And it lights up this play button. So if we clicked on base, it would do some loading stuff. And you could see the treatment here. When it gets done here, it's going to light up the play button for base. Yeah, there it goes. And now if we go back to E4 Trainer Python course, well, it's going to do the same thing. And what it's really doing is it's activating that virtual environment. Okay, and if we click on the play button, we can do a couple of things. We can open a terminal, okay? We can open Python, or we could open with Jupyter Notebook. Okay, so let's just open a terminal. Okay, so that's going to open a command line terminal for with Anaconda configurations. I'm going to go change that font size to 24 again so we can see. Okay, and the thing I wanted to show you is it already says E4 Trainer Python course. So if we get to the command line dialog this way, it's already activated our chosen virtual env. Okay. That's all I'm going to show here. So let's exit out of here. Okay. Let's say that we decided that we wanted to open with Python. Okay, so well, it opens it and it fires up the Python interpreter, uh, uh, 3.10.4. That's what we want because that's what we just installed. And we're at this thing called the Python REPL. Uh, REPL stands for Read, Evaluate, Print Loop. And it's sort of a command line for Python, okay? And it just keeps prompting us for input. And because Python's an interpreted language, it will act on it when it can. So we could type in print and then open paren and then an apostrophe to start a string. Hi, mom. Exclamation, apostrophe to close the string, right paren to close the parens, enter, and it prints, hi mom. Now, can I just exit out of this? No. Type exit. It tells us to either exit or something like that. So there are several ways to quit the Python uh, interpreter. Um, it's saying to use the function exit, but the one that I always use is called quit. Quit, paren, paren. There he goes. So stopping Python like that, and then we're going to type exit, and that's going to go away. Now, so we've tested Python. We're getting the right version of Python. That's good. So let's click on the play button again, and let's see what happens if we try to use the Jupyter notebook. Okay, when we use a Jupyter notebook, it fires up the Jupyter server. It wants us to pick a browser, so I'll pick Edge. It fires up the Jupyter server, and it opens up a web page. Okay, that's in Jupyter mode. And if we want to create a new notebook, we go to this kind of upper right area, you click on New, Python 3, and we get a new Python 3 notebook. And we're just going to type in some code into this one cell that we have. And let's say again, print, open paren, open apostrophe, hi, mom, exclamation. And you can see that we're getting a little more help with typing here because it closed the string apostrophes and the paren. And then we can run this by a shift enter, and it printed hi mom. So that's all we're going to see about that. So that works just fine. Okay, so we're going to close this. We're going to close this tab. Okay, and then we're going to click on leave. And it brings up the original tab that we have. And you'll notice that there's a quit and a logout. And the quit will stop the Jupyter server. That's what we want to do. So we're going to click on quit. Okay, and it says the server's been stopped. So we can close the browser. Okay, so that all works just fine, right? So again, in my class, we typically work with Anaconda Navigator unless Navigator and the operating system are in such are so out of sorts with each other that Navigator bugs are getting in our way. But the only Navigator bug I see is we don't see the names for all the descriptions for all the packages, and that's okay. All right, so we're going to close Navigator, and I'm going to click this don't show again, yes. All right. Now, how could we have tested this at the command line? Well, let's go down to this icon that we have here for the Anaconda prompt and open it up. Okay, and you can see that we have the base virtual env there. And let's right click, go to properties, and let's change the font again. And again, go to 24 point. That looks a lot better. Okay, so the base virtual env is not the one that we want. So a lot of times we need to remind ourselves what virtual envs we have and where they're located. So we can type conda info --envs. Okay, and we see base is in this C program data Anaconda 3 directory, but E4 Trainer Python course is here in one of my user directories. And again, when we get to the next activity in the course, which is going to be installing PyCharm, and every time we create a PyCharm project, we might be asked to point to a file in the virtual env. And it's pretty common for people to forget where they are. And coming back here to the Anaconda prompt and doing a condo info envs, this is a way to remind yourself about where your virtual envs are. Okay, so how can we use E4 Trainer Python course instead of base? Well, we have to activate it. How do I know that? Well, because I can look at the Conda cheat sheet, right? Which I'm not going to bring out right now, but we type in Conda space activate, and one of the names that we have, so E4 Trainer Python course. Okay, and now you see it pop up in the parens at the left side. Okay, so what happens now if we type Python to start up the Python interpreter? Well, it's 3.10.4, exactly the version that we wanted. So now we can type quit, paren, and it quits that. And what if we wanted to start up the Jupyter notebook server from the command line? Well, we can type in Jupyter, Pyter, Py for Python, space notebook. And this will crank up the Jupyter notebook server and open the browser. So here we are. We're at the same point. We can say we want a new Python 3. Okay, and we can come into the one cell that we have, and we can just enter print hi mom. Okay, and the way that you execute a cell is shift enter, and it ran the cell, hi mom. And again, we can close this tab and say it's okay to leave, and then we're at more the server and directory page. In the upper right is a button for quit, and it stops the server. And we close the browser. And here we can see all the stuff that went on. These are all the messages that came from the server as it started up and then shut down. Okay, and now we're just going to type exit, and that's going to close. And it is tested. And so we've done the last of the things that we're going to do here. So what comes next? Well, this is the end of this tutorial. The next tutorial is installing PyCharm. So find that tutorial and join me there. And I'll say bye until next time. Bye-bye.